back. Today I'm going to be doing my September wrap up. If you remember, if you saw at the beginning of September, I posted a TBR because I was planning on participating in the magical readathon, which was taking place over the course of the entire month of September, and I did participate in that. I posted one vlog, which I will leave a link to if you want to go and watch it. I did vlog the rest of the month, but I never got around to editing those vlogs, and also they weren't very good. Like, I did not have the motivation to vlog after that first one. It was just like kind of a disaster. I was reading consistently and I was loving reading, but I was not loving vlogging. So I decided that rather than post vlogs that I wasn't like happy with, I would just scrap the vlogging altogether, and those videos never got posted, and it is what it is. We're moving on from it at this point. All that aside though, September was an incredible reading month for me. I read 18 books in the month of September, which is the most I've read in a single month in probably 2 years, which is amazing. I will say that 8 of the 18 books that I read were books that I reread. I went on a little like romance rereading kick towards the end of the month, and I'll talk about that obviously, but still 10 books, 10 new to me books in the month of September is fantastic. So I'm super happy. I also enjoyed a lot of what I read in September, and even had a 5-star read and a book that's probably going to end up on my favorites of the year list. So I'm really excited to talk to you about all the books that I read in the month of September / for the magical readathon. Instead of talking about these in order that I read them, I'm going to talk about them in order of the way they fit into the magical readathon challenges. I somehow managed to tick off every single challenge for the magical readathon, like of the 7 main challenges, and then I also ticked off a few of the challenges for like the character building stuff. So I'm just pleased. Like, I really did have a great reading month, and I can't believe that I managed to hit every challenge that I wanted to hit, as well as some of the bonus challenges. And for the most part, I stuck to my TBR, and now I'm going to talk to you about all the books I read in September. Okay, so the first challenge for the magical readathon was the novice path entrance, and the challenge for that was to read a book with a map. And I had some other books on my TBR, and I will be honest, I had to like kind of move things around to kind of fit all the challenges, because I just found myself like being drawn to certain types of books, and so I managed to make it work however it worked. But the book that I'm using to complete the challenge of a book with a map in it is Jane Unlimited by Kristen Cashore. This is a YA contemporary-ish type story, and it does in fact have a map right in the front right there. This is a map of the house and the grounds where this story takes place. So I actually talked pretty extensively about this book in my one magical readathon vlog that I posted, but if you didn't watch that video. But this is about a girl named Jane who promised her aunt before she died that if she ever got an invitation to go to this house, that she would accept it. And at the beginning of the book, Jane's aunt has passed away, and an old friend comes back into her life and invites her to go to this house for their like spring gala. And Jane, remembering the promise that she made to her aunt, decides, yeah, I'll go. And when she gets there, she realizes that this house is a little bit quirkier than she was anticipating, and she realizes that there is a lot going on here. There are some mysteries and some people that she's interested in. And at the end of like the prologue, I guess, the end of the introduction, she basically is given the choice. She can follow several different paths, and the rest of the book follows what would happen if she followed each of these paths. And each of these like little stories is a different genre. There's like a mystery, a thriller, there's a horror story, I think fantasy, and a sci-fi. So there's a little bit of everything in here, and for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I really loved Kristen Cashore's writing style, and I really enjoyed the characterization of all the characters in this book, not just the main character Jane, but all the side characters that we slowly get to know over the course of all of these stories. It definitely is weird and probably not going to be a book for everyone. You kind of have to go into it knowing that you're not going to really be able to predict what's going to happen, and you might not be completely satisfied with every single story. I really liked the first 2 stories a lot. They were the mystery story and then the thriller story, and then it got a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more like fantastical than I was anticipating, and I didn't really love the latter half of the book as much, but I thought overall it was a really good book, and I'm really glad to have read it. And also this was on my 5-star predictions, my 2021 TBR, so it was nice to take another one of those books off. If you've read Kristen Cashore in the past and you're looking for something a little bit different, then this one might be a good one to go with. Also, if you're just in the mood for something kind of quirky, different, something you're willing to experiment on, then I would definitely give this book a go. The next challenge was the Ash Thorn Tree, which the challenge for that was to read a book that has been tempting you, or to read the book that's at the top of your TBR. This is the one challenge that I kind of am stretching a little bit on the book that I picked, because I did have some books in mind for books that kept tempting me on my shelves, but for the most part, any book that I pick is the book that's at the top of my TBR, because I'm a mood reader and I just read whatever I'm in the mood for the most part. So I ended up choosing Isn't It Bromantic by Lyssa Kay Adams to complete this challenge, because I had been waiting for this book on hold forever from my library, and I finally got it. So it was at the top of my TBR. And this is the 4th book in the Bromance Book Club contemporary romance series. This is the 4th installment in a companion series. So while you don't have to have read the first 3 books to enjoy this, I would definitely recommend doing it, just because the characters from the first 3 books definitely come into play. This book follows a character who's been a side character in the first 3 books that we've known mostly as the Russian for the course of the series so far, and it follows him and the romance that he has with his wife. And you may be thinking, like, that's his wife, like, aren't they already in love? Well, not really, because they had a marriage of convenience. They got married so that his wife could move to the United States from Russia to go to school. At the beginning of the book, Vlad decides that he is ready to have a normal relationship with his wife, and when he tells her, she gets kind of scared and she doesn't really want to do this. She tells him that she's going to go back to Russia and she wants a divorce. And this book is all about them kind of finding their way back to each other. They were childhood friends who decided to do this marriage of convenience thing, and then over the course of the book they realize that they have feelings for each other, and I really enjoyed it a lot. I think this one maybe is my favorite of the series so far, although I did really enjoy the 3rd one as well. I talked a lot about this one in that first readathon vlog as well, so if you want to go kind of hear my thoughts as I was reading it, then I would recommend going and watching that video. But I thought that Vlad and Elena had a really great relationship. I really loved each of them individually and as a couple. I really liked the course that the story took. I really liked the progression of the relationship, them not really being able to communicate and then slowly figuring out how they wanted their lives to go. I thought it was really beautiful. This is probably the only instance where I would actually say that I enjoyed miscommunication as a trope. My only really issue was that there was like a mystery element that kind of came into play about halfway through the story and then was concluded obviously at the end, and I felt like that was unnecessary, really. I don't really think it added much to the story or the romance to like want to have that in there. Also, it was incredibly predictable, and so it just kind of was like bleh, you know, reading it and like figuring out how it concluded. Like, I wasn't shocked and I didn't find it necessary, so that kind of did annoy me. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this book and I would definitely recommend it. If you haven't read the Bromance Book Club series, then I would definitely give it a go, and I would also just highly recommend the 3rd and 4th books, because those are probably the strongest of the series for me. And if she plans to write more in the future, I will definitely continue to read them. I don't know that there has been any kind of confirmation that the series is going to keep going past 4, but I would keep reading them because I do think it's a ton of fun. The next challenge on the novice path was The Mist of Solitude, and the challenge for that was to read a standalone. And so the book that I ended up reading for this challenge was Switch by A.S. King. This is a weird, speculative, contemporary story about a world where time just stops. Like, one day the clock stops moving, Earth keeps spinning, and the sun keeps rising and setting, but the clocks don't move, time does not move. And it's all about a girl who is dealing with some family stuff, and there's also this mysterious switch in her house that she thinks might somehow be connected to time stopping, and her dad is going a little bit crazy, and she's also figuring out that she is really good at, I think, javelin or something, and she joins her school's track and field team. This was really bizarre. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it at all. I read this over the course of an afternoon, and I just didn't I just didn't like it. I wanted to, because I've loved books by A.S. King in the past, but I've also felt only okay about books by A.S. King in the past. So she's a pretty hit or miss author for me. And this one, unfortunately, was a huge miss. It was just too weird, I think. And I don't really think it had a good direction. There were a bunch of like side kind of stories, or not stories, but like, I don't know, there was just these little like side conversations and like side elements thrown in that never really got full context in the story itself. I also feel like I didn't really know or care who the main character was. I do understand that this is kind of a commentary on the pandemic. Obviously, time kind of stood still for a lot of people for a long time because of the pandemic and because of quarantine. I just feel like it didn't really go where it could have gone, I guess. I don't really know what I wanted from it, and I don't really know what could have made it different. I just think that it just wasn't the book for me, and that's okay. I will continue to read A.S. King because I have enjoyed books by her, but this one just unfortunately didn't do it for me. The next challenge was The Ruin of the Sky, and the challenge for that was to read a book featuring ghosts or a haunted house or some kind of supernatural element, and I managed to take this challenge off right at the very end of the month by reading Delicates by Brenna Thumler. This is a graphic novel, and it's actually the sequel to Sheets, which I read last year and really enjoyed. Sheets was about a girl who was really struggling with the death of her mother, and a ghost comes to the laundromat that her family owns and befriends her, and this is the follow-up. This is what happens like a year later. She and the ghost are still friends, and she is making a new friend at her school and getting into some new hobbies, and I thought it was really great. I thought it was really cute. I think that there is a lot of really great commentary about bullying and figuring out who you are in junior high, and also like understanding the true meaning of friendship and really like what it means to be a friend. I just thought it was really cute. I really love the art style, and I would continue to read books by Brenna Thumler. If she continued to write books about this little ghost and human friendship duo, I would keep reading them because it's really cute and I liked it. The next challenge was Obsidian Falls, and that was to read a mystery or thriller book. And for this challenge, I read my favorite book of the entire month of September, and that was Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. This is my first thriller by Mary Kubica. She's an author that I have heard so much about for a long time. This book is her newest release. It came out this year, and I've seen such good reviews for it, like tons of praise, and I knew I had to give it a go, and I loved it. It was so good. It was probably the best thriller I've read in a very long time. So this book is set in a town where a woman has gone missing, and it's kind of all over the news. Nobody really knows what happened. She kind of vanished into thin air, and then like 10 days after she disappears, another woman and her young daughter also have gone missing. The book is set 11 years after these disappearances, and at the start of the story, the little girl has come back. She has reappeared, and nobody really knows exactly what happened, and so it's kind of a mystery about what happened and how did this girl manage to survive and come back into the world. And I loved it. It was so good. There are so many positives about this book. Number one, the pacing. I thought the pacing of the story was so well done. The story is told from several different points of views, and it's told in present day, and it's also told in flashbacks. And you're getting pieces of all these different mysteries. You're trying to figure out what happened to the first woman that went missing. You're trying to figure out what happened to the mother and daughter that went missing. You're trying to figure out how this girl came back. Like, where has she been all this time? You're also trying to figure out if these disappearances are connected. And there's also some other mysteries, some side mysteries that are kind of thrown in. And I thought that, like I said, pacing was excellent. The way that the author told the story, the format, the flashbacks and the different points of views helped piece these stories together. And I loved it so much. It had some of the best twists and turns. I definitely didn't see the big plot twist coming. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what I can do to other than tell you, like, you need to go read this book. If you are a fan of mystery thrillers, you need to pick this book up. I've been reading a lot of duds lately in terms of mystery thrillers, and this one just, it reignited my love and desire to read mystery thrillers. Like, I want to read only mysteries for the entire month of October because I thought this book was so excellent. I need to read more. I need to continue to love thrillers like I loved this book. So if you have read it, I would definitely love some suggestions for other thrillers to read that are similar to this. Maybe other Mary Kubica books that I should pick up now that I have read this. And if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend going and picking it up. I really also enjoyed the audiobook. It's got several different narrators, and I just, so good. So good. My favorite book of the month, obviously. The next challenge was The Tower of Rumination, and for that one you had to read a 5-star prediction, which was easy for me because I had a whole 5-star predictions TBR for the year 2021. And so for this one I read Emma by Jane Austen. I said in my TBR that I didn't think I was gonna get around to Emma because it's a classic, a little bit harder read, but I was so in the mood for it. Honestly, like I just wanted to read it. I think it was on my TBR, somebody commented and said that the audiobook for Emma was really great. So I actually resubscribed to Audible so that I could get the audiobook, and I downloaded it and I listened to it and I loved it. It was really good. It wasn't a 5-star read, but I did really enjoy it. I'm pretty familiar with the story of Emma already, so I just was excited to actually like read the source material from all these adaptations that I've seen in the past. So Emma is about a girl, Emma Woodhouse, who at the beginning of the book has successfully matched her like nanny, like housekeeper companion, and a man that lives in the neighborhood that she lives in. And so she decides that matchmaking is what she's good at, and she has decided that she's going to like match up all these other people that live in like the area that she lives in. And obviously she's very jaded because she's very privileged, and she doesn't realize that not everybody sees the world or experiences the world the same way she does. And over the course of the book, yes, she tries and fails to match up pairs, but also she learns a lot about herself along the way. I enjoyed this because I did kind of identify with Emma, at least at the beginning. She is a bit of a busybody. She definitely is in a lot of people's business that she doesn't need to be in, and she thinks that she has the best opinion of all and that what she wants is how anything should go. I think that she really does grow as a character over the course of the book. She comes into her own a little bit more. She realizes that she, one, is not the center of everybody's world, and two, doesn't really know herself as well as she thought she did, and doesn't really know best like she thought she did. I also just love her and Mr. Knightley, obviously. Like, I think that it's a really great book. Not Pride and Prejudice levels amazing for me, but fantastic. I'm very excited to continue reading more Jane Austen in the future. I've never read Sense and Sensibility or Northanger Abbey or Persuasion, so I still have quite a few books by Jane Austen to read, and I will definitely be getting to those hopefully sooner rather than later. I did really enjoy Emma. I do think that it has some similarities to Pride and Prejudice in terms of like types of characters and kind of not plot necessarily, but just the feel of the story. But I think Pride and Prejudice does it better, honestly. And also, like, obviously Mr. Darcy doesn't really, like, there's no comparison to Mr. Darcy. Like, Mr. Knightley does not live up, but still great, and I'm glad that I read it. And the final main challenge of the novice path, the magical readathon, was the Aurelium Academy arc, which was to read a book with a school setting. And for that one, I read Wundersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the sequel to Nevermore, which is my favorite middle grade book that I've ever read, and this was basically no different. I really enjoyed this. It was a ton of fun, and I'm so glad to have finally gotten back into the world of Nevermore, and I'm even more excited to continue on and read book 3 in preparation for book 4, which is coming out next year. If you don't know, Nevermore is about a girl named Morgan Crow who has been told her whole life that she is a cursed child and she is destined to die on her 11th birthday. But when her 11th birthday rolls around, instead of dying, she is taken into the magical world of Nevermore by Jupiter North, a very crazy, whimsical character who is my favorite character of the series. And she discovers that there's a whole other world full of really great, accepting people. Over the course of Nevermore, she realizes why she has always been deemed a cursed child. This book kind of just follows up with that. Like, she's learning more about herself, she's learning more about this magical power that she has, and she is also starting school at the Wondrous Academy with all of her new friends. It's tons of fun, so like whimsical and magical and just fun. Like, I don't know any other word to describe it other than it's just a good time from start to finish. I do have some small issues with the series in general, and that is that I feel like the lack of communication between the adults and Morgan can be a bit frustrating. In the first book, Morgan is trying to figure out what's going on with her the whole time, and she's never really like given the courtesy of a conversation. Like, none of the adults will just sit down and say, here's where we're at. And I feel like it was kind of the same in this one. Like, I just felt like the adults were not being very fair to her. They weren't giving her like a chance to defend herself or kind of just explain what was different and special about her. If that had been done one time, then I feel like a lot of the like inner conflict that Morgan was feeling could have gone away. She has a lot of self-doubt in this book, which I just don't think is very fair for a 12-year-old, but super fun. Like, I cannot wait to read book 3, and I'm so excited to continue on with this series. I think it's supposed to be like 6 or 7 books total, so there's still quite a bit of a ways to go in terms of story arc, and I just can't wait to see where the rest of the series goes. And if you haven't picked up the Nevermore series, then what are you doing? Even if you don't like middle grade, or even if you don't tend to like middle grade, give this series a try, because I guarantee you will find some enjoyment in it. So those were the main challenges of the Magical Readathon, the Novice Path. But like I said in my TBR, there are some like different like defining features that you can pick out based on what kind of character you want. And so I did read a few books that met some of those challenges. Obviously, the next round of the Magical Readathon isn't happening until I think April of next year. So G has said that if you want, you can kind of take your time to build your character over the next few months. So if I decide I want to like read all different books for all these challenges and kind of like go from there, I'm perfectly within my rights to do so. But I decided that I wanted to kind of see what all I could read, like what my options would be if I just strictly picked books from what I read in September. With all that being said, the first like subsection, or like the first category, was the background, and I ended up only reading a book for the urban challenge, which was to read a book set in a city or town. For this one, I read The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I'm on a bit of a Christina Lauren kick right now. I read quite a few of their books over the past couple months, and I read 2 this month. This is actually their newest release. It came out this year, and it's about a woman who spontaneously decides to sign up for this matchmaking service, or like this dating service, and it's different from any other dating service because you give them a sample of your DNA and they match you up to someone based on like your DNA compatibility. There's all this science behind it, like can people actually fall in love, or are people like chemically like designed to fall in love based on their DNA? And at the beginning of the book, a match is found for her. The highest match that this company has ever had, and it's actually with the company's founder. And so this story is all about the main character and this company's founder getting to know each other. At first, it starts out kind of as like a fake dating thing. Obviously, there's like this big publicity aspect to it because this company is about to go public, and having this romance for like marketing purposes really will help them out. But obviously, because it's a romance, it slowly becomes real, and I loved it. I really loved the main characters. I think Jess is the main character's name. The love interest name is River, and I thought that their chemistry was really great. I really loved the like slow buildup of their relationship. They start out as, well, complete strangers and then build into something really magical. Also, I don't typically tend to love kids in books, like romances specifically. I don't always love books that feature children, but Jess has a little girl in the story, and I just thought that her daughter was one of the cutest parts of the story. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, and I think it might be my favorite Christina Lauren book that I've read so far. I think at this point, after this month, I've read 5, and I really liked this. So this one may end up being my favorite, but we'll see. I'm gonna keep reading their books and keep finding out how much I love them. If you haven't read it yet, I would definitely recommend doing so. It's just really great, like sweet romantic contemporary, and there's not really anything super problematic about it, which I appreciate, and I just thought it was a ton of fun. The next little subsection category was Province, and I ended up only reading 1 book for this category as well, and that was the challenge of Carador, which was to read a book from an ongoing series. And for this one, I read The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the sequel to The Inheritance Games, which I read earlier this year, and I really enjoyed it, and I've been highly anticipating this sequel. I talked about this one pretty extensively in my vlog that I posted as well, so you can go check that out if you want to hear more about this. The Inheritance Games is about a girl named Avery who at the beginning of the book finds out that she has inherited billions of dollars from this very rich man in Texas, and she doesn't know anything about him. She's never met him. She has no recollection of any kind of like relationship between the two. So she moves to this estate where she has to live for a year in order to collect the inheritance, and there's like some mysteries obviously tied up in that book, and this is the sequel. At the end of the first book, there is a bit of a like cliffhanger. It leaves off on a bit of a mystery, and so this book just follows up from there, and again, full of mysteries, full of twists and turns, super fun. I think that Jennifer Lynn Barnes is just so good at writing very like compulsively readable, super compelling YA mysteries that just keep you turning the page. I don't think that there's anything like super special about her books, to be honest. Like they're pretty standard in terms of YA mysteries, but there's something so like, I don't know, so readable about them that keeps you hooked from the very beginning. I also really enjoy the cast of characters in this book, and that is a thing that keeps me reading as well, because I like to see how all these relationships are developing. Avery has a relationship, or she's building a relationship with the members of this family, and 4 of the members of this family are brothers that she's getting to know each of them in a different way. And there's not like a weird, like super big love triangle pentagon thing. She does have a bit of a love triangle with a couple of the brothers, but it's very respectful and not like weird. I don't know how else to say it, but I don't know, it's just really good. And also the romance in general just kind of takes a back seat. Like it's not as important as the mysteries. You may have heard this often compared to the movie Knives Out, like a YA version of Knives Out, and that is such a great comparison. If you loved that movie, I definitely think you should give this series a go. In terms of how under or overrated it is, I feel like in general, Jennifer Lynn Barnes is incredibly underrated, but I do feel like The Inheritance Games has been pretty popular on BookTube, TikTok, Instagram, so you maybe have seen it, you might have read it, but if not, give it a go. It's so fun. And I found out after reading this book that there's actually going to be a 3rd book that's coming out next year. So, ongoing series, fits perfectly for the challenge, and I can't wait to read more from these characters. And I'm mad that I have to wait a whole year for that to happen. And then lastly, the last little category is the heritage category, and that's like what type of character, what kind of like race of character you are. I managed to take off 2 of the challenges for this one, and that was the human challenge to read a contemporary / nonfiction book, and the Iltyrian challenge, which was to read a book with a crow on the cover or title, or to read a book with a red cover. I'm going to talk about that one first because the books that I reread fit the contemporary challenge, so I'll talk about those at the end because they're rereads. So the book with red on the cover that I read was The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. Like I said, I read 2 of their books this month, and unfortunately this probably is my least favorite Christina Lauren book that I've read, but I did like it. I mean, it was a quick read, and I had a good time listening to the audiobook while I was playing some Breath of the Wild, so I can't really like complain too much. But this book is actually about a set of characters, a couple of couples that work on or are related in some way to a TV show similar to like Fixer Upper or something like that, HGTV, like Flip or Flop. There's 2 characters in this book that are a married couple, think like Chip and Joanna Gaines-esque, who have had very successful TV careers, like doing house flips and doing design and stuff like that. They are getting ready to go on this big book tour. They've just released a book, and nobody knows that in fact their marriage is falling apart. The husband has cheated on the wife several times, and they are about to be stuck on a tour bus together for a couple of months. The actual main characters of the book are the assistants to this husband and wife couple, and they end up having to go on this book tour with them to kind of keep the peace, like keep things running smooth, make sure that the media, like public, doesn't find out that in fact this couple hates each other and are very nearly on the brink of divorce. And over the course of the book, the assistants also fall in love, and it's a romance between them. I did think that the husband and wife like fighting thing was super interesting. Like that was probably the most interesting part of the book, and I would have continued to probably read more about that situation. This book is really short, so I think that they packed in a lot in a very small amount of time, and I do think that the romance between the other 2, like the assistants, was not necessarily like rushed, but it definitely felt like it came out of nowhere. I didn't really believe their romance. I had no reason to believe that they actually had feelings for each other or developed feelings for each other in a very short amount of time. At the beginning of the story, I wouldn't say they're necessarily like enemies, but they aren't really friends. They don't really get along. They don't really have a lot to do with each other, to be honest. And in like a week later, they are jumping into bed together and they're telling each other that they love each other. And it just was a little bit strange. I just didn't believe it, to be honest. Like it just didn't strike me as realistic. I think the book overall was fine. Like I said, I enjoyed the audiobook. A quick read. I think I read it in like 2.5 hours because I listened to the audiobook on like 2 times speed, but overall it was definitely not a favorite. Finally, like I said, I read some contemporary romance. I went on a whole rereading binge over the course of like a week. I actually reread 2 entire Nora Roberts series. So I'm a big Nora Roberts fan, and I've talked about her books on my channel in the past, but there's 2 like main series that I just find myself being drawn back to for like comfort reasons, and that is the Mackade brothers series, which is about these 4 brothers in this Maryland town, and there's also like kind of a little bit of a paranormal aspect to it. Each of the brothers has their own book, and there's romance, and it's very 90s. All these books came out in the 90s, and there's definitely like this 90s feel to them. If you just think of it as it's of its time, it's not overly offensive, you know, like, yeah, it's not like the best thing to read, but not like the worst either, you know? I just think that it's fun. I really love reading these companion series that Nora Roberts writes, and I just find the Mackade Brothers series to be super fun. So I read them. I reread them every once in a while. I actually reread them last year. I didn't realize that I had just read them in 2020. I thought it had been a couple of years, and so I read them again, and I'll probably read them again in a couple of years, and it's just a series that I'll continue to revisit when I need just a little pick-me-up. The other Nora Roberts series that I find myself just drawn to over and over and over again is the Bride Quartet. I only own the first 3. I don't own the 4th one because I'm not gonna buy it brand new. I'm just like collecting them whenever I find them in thrift stores or used bookstores or whatever. This is another companion series about these 4 best friends who run this wedding planning business, and each of them is responsible for a different component. So we've got the photographer, and we've got the florist, and we've got the baker, and then the 4th one is about the like overall like wedding planner, like the girl that kind of oversees all of it. And it's just their romances. It takes place over the course of a year, and each of them falls in love, and again, like, nothing overly wrong with them. They're just a good time. Like, they make me feel happy. I really love reading about love, and I reread these probably like every 2 to 3 years. This was actually my first time reading them since I myself got married, so it hit a little different this time. Like, it was just a little, I felt a little different about it, and I still love them. They're just great. You know, if you're looking for something to occupy a weekend of your time, then pick up the Bride Quartet. Highly recommend. So great. Like, Nora Roberts in general, she knows what she's doing, man, and I'm gonna keep reading her books because I love them. So those are all the books that I read in the month of September. An incredible reading month, my best reading month forever, like probably gonna be my best reading month for the next few years because I can't imagine reading 18 books in a single month again for a long time, but just so good. I'm so glad to finally be back in this like reading mojo. Even though I didn't make a ton of videos this month like I was planning on, I'm still just excited about books and reading, and I hope that I can carry this reading momentum into October. October is spooky time. Obviously, like, I have so many plans to read, like atmospheric mysteries and horror even a little bit. I'm excited about reading again, which makes me feel happy. Let me know down in the comments if you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video and what you thought about them. Do you have similar or different opinions to mine? I'd really love to know. And also let me know some books that you read in the month of September. What was your favorite book that you read in September? How did you do on the magical readathon if you were participating? I'd really love to know all the things down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!